BYU is obviously a program that has upheld its morals in more ways than one over many, many decades as a college athletics department, most particularly in football and basketball, because those are the chief revenue drivers and obviously the chief sports that generate the most interest and have the most fans. Speaking of BYU sports. The situation at hand here is, as if we've talked about on yesterday's podcast ad nauseum, is the House settlement is poised to completely change how college athletics goes about its business. The situation is that BYU, for many, many years, when those bag men were out there that were sharing money with athletes under the table, BYU would not partake. And they made it very clear to their coaches that they were not to do anything that was untoward. They were not to do anything that was against the rules that the NCAA had set forth. In the current iteration of things, just before the House settlement went into effect, BYU is competing very favorably with the rules that were in effect. Now, when it comes to the House settlement, they are going to have Deloitte Consulting and a clearinghouse called NILGo that is going to vet any and all NIL deals that are worth more than $600, which is quite a few of them. As they mentioned, 70% of the past NIL deals that were handed out by collectives would have been nixed or canceled or just straight up denied by the NIL clearinghouse based on history. They went back through all those different deals. It said 70% of the collectives deals would have been nixed. They said 90% of the actual NIL deals that were put together by actual companies would be approved. So that's going to be a key shift here, is that the collective focus in terms of NIL is going at least to be diminished to some level, and it's going to be legit NIL deals coming from individual companies to individual athletes, at least in theory. Now, yesterday, if you'd missed it, the conference commissioners from the Power Five, as they called it, it's really the Power Four now, spoke to national media. I was not included on this. We're talking like national college football writers. And they said that they have former MLB executive Brian Seeley in place as the new CEO of a new enforcement organization called the College Sports Commission. Seeley's job is to lead the team responsible for enforcement of the new rules around revenue sharing, third-party payments to players for NIL deals, and roster limits. The biggest question here, though, is what is going to happen when rules are broken? Well, there are no good answers for that because, as they mentioned, Jim Phillips from the ACC said, quote, "We're in the process of developing some of those rules and structure and overall implementation of that. Mind you, this new era of college athletics is already kind of in effect and fully goes into effect on July 1. So you have less than a month to get this figured out." As he mentions, now we have Brian on board. I think we'll be able to move a little bit quicker, but we want to get this right. It's one of those areas that you have until somebody leading the College Sports Commission. It's difficult to get together with that individual and start some of that framework that will be in place. Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, called it progress over perfection and said that while there will be challenges, they will meet them over time. He said this, quote, speaking of Yormark, "Our schools want rules, and we're providing rules, and we'll be governed by those rules. And if you break those rules, the ramifications will be punitive," Yormark said. Okay. Here's my question, my concern is that, as I mentioned, BYU, they will follow the rules. Whatever the rules are, BYU will play by them. And they angered a lot of local fan bases and even some national fan bases with their prowess in the NIL game when there were very few, if any, regulations on it. Okay. BYU play by the rules there. In this circumstance, the rules are obviously clear that it's going to go through a clearinghouse. I fully expect that NILGo, the second that they nix a big enough deal that an athlete feels like that they were hard done by, NILGo is going to be sued into oblivion. There are going to be lawsuits. There are billable hours, as I say often, are undefeated, and they will remain such in college sports until it feels like there's an act of Congress that essentially codifies what they have established here, if they really decide to codify it. That's a big question mark in and of itself. The situation at hand is, I fully expect if you start to see these NIL deals get nixed by the NILGo clearinghouse, that money, it goes back under the table, and that's just simply something that BYU will not participate in, and thereby BYU can find itself at a disadvantage that it was for many, many years, if not decades, leading up to this past iteration of NIL where BYU is competing very favorably. Now, I fully expect BYU's boosters will step to the forefront, whether they're owners of companies, whether they're a president of an organization that wants to have a BYU athlete be a spokesperson, advertise on social media, be an influencer for their product or service. That is how true NIL is going to compete for BYU. And I fully expect BYU will be able to help athletes find said deals and obviously execute them to the highest level possible. It is my concern, though, that, like I said, if the money goes back under the table, goes to bagmen once again, where they're legitimately money is exchanging hands of a seedy nature, that is when BYU finds itself at a disadvantage once again. And there's some out there probably rooting for BYU to be back in that circumstance because, frankly, they don't want BYU to have a leg up on them. It's a very interesting time in college athletics. And as I mentioned, the fact that these college commissioners, A, don't know what the rules are going to be quite yet, B, don't know what the punitive measures or the punishments are going to be as well, it tells me this is going to be an abject failure, at least at the outset. Could they figure it out in time? Maybe so, but simply put, what were y'all doing while we were waiting for the House settlement to get established? I know that Jim Phillips said they needed to get the commissioner in place to really buckle down on this, but you could at least have some sort of a framework of, hey, if program X does this, here is the punishment affixed to that. You don't have any of that. That's the concern I have, is that we're still going to see programs running amok. And we have heard from Brett Yormark and others that they're going to have these affiliation agreements that are going to be signed by the individual schools out there that will promise, cross our hearts and hope to die, that we're not going to sue the College Sports Commission, our conference, or the NCAA over these new NIL regulations. And I'm over here just like, you can say that, but you've got the fingers behind your back saying, yeah, we're going to sign that document. And meanwhile, there are coaches over there saying, all right, the second I can break those rules, guarantee I'm going to break them. And the biggest thing is you're going to see people bet on whether it's state laws, whether it's they have enough high-powered lawyers that are going to allow them to operate outside of the rules that are being set forth here. I'd like to think that we are at 70. Are we at 70 Power 4 programs? I don't remember what number we're at, but it's right about that number. I would like to think that all of them are going to be on board with competing on the same level playing field. But history suggests that is a foolhardy notion. And if you believe that, you're dumb. And that's the concern I have, is I know the way that BYU operates, it will be within the framework and the rules established. And you can expect BYU will uphold their end of the bargain. I'm just not so sure that there are going to be many more than a handful who will do the same alongside them, unless I am completely misreading the room. But as I mentioned, history suggests that you will see programs operating outside of these set rules. And I hope that the punishments are truly punitive and get them back in line. But I also expect that, as I mentioned, lawsuits and billable hours from lawyers will remain undefeated in college sports. All right, coming up next, does BYU have their own Caitlin Clark, insert dominant female athlete, Simone Biles, whoever it might be? Do they have their own coming on campus in very short order? Sure looks that way. Who is Jane Hendegren, and what is she set to accomplish in a BYU uniform? We'll delve into that next, right here on Locked On Cougars.